Classified information, she said. At least we're certain he won't die, 'cause I'm here in this time playing girl. I see. Well, we'll keep a closer watch on him, regardless. Maybe he'll need us when the time comes, eh? Thanks. I trust you and your group more than I trust Nagato and her group. And I never thanked you for keeping your cool when we were doing that movie. I don't know if we could have respected each other if I had acted on my impulses during that scene in the mansion. At least the two boys in my life try to protect me, she said. No problem. Is that all you wanted to tell me? I asked her. Yeah. I guess better get back then, she said. The thought of my career at Pierce's Canyon being hurt bothered me for the rest of that night. And that was some fucking bullshit. Chapter 2 previews. Dr. House was intrigued by the envelope that appeared on his desk. It was the return address completely in Japanese. House, are you sure that you're not going there for a week and has nothing to do with your unfinished business with Dr. Suzuyama? Wilson said, almost like it was a dare for him to contradict. Authors aside, I'll some debates with myself. I didn't include the Japanese honorifics in the story would read better. I know it's actually not canon to have Itsuki as being gay, but it's more interesting for me to write him that way. I hope I am not being that much OC of the characters. I know that there is actually Shuria that craves smoked cheese, but for comedy's sake, I also had the character she was parodying have the same trait there. Please review this and let me know what works and what I should work on. Chapter 2. A Japanese white whale. House POV. He never expected finding a temporary replacement for 13 would be so challenging. And yet it did have some fun. Chase was an idiot. Foreman wanted to be like him light it again, and Saub epically failed again. With his luck, his boss and lover would be the most Cameron-like doppelganger she could find without all the angst about dying husbands and fixing broken people. Cameron always did have that annoying self-righteousness about her, balanced with how pretty she was. She also occasionally would prove herself worthy as one of his fellows, so he did try to get her back to the team. He knew eventually that 13's villain would be a new target for his witticisms and his unique way of doing things. That morning was one of the more typical ones where the team had no cases that they were working on, and instead he was going to be stuck working Princeborough's free clinic. This was one of those fears that Cameron was really useful for, since she actually cared about stupid people and the stupid things that they did, and they knew insurance wouldn't cover it. They didn't have insurance in the first place, so he was the one that had to explain to them that they were too old not to know how to use a condom properly. Another thing is the clinic had printing it was stupid parents bringing their kids in for the sniffles. They usually wanted an antibiotic too. It was no wonder that MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, cases were on the rise. Just look at the average PPTH, Prince Plainborough Teaching Hospital clinic patient. Few hours diagnosing the usual boring, but painfully, potentially deadly conditions followed. 3 cases of heterivore undiagnosed diabetes, 1 case of hypertension, yet another Viagra-seeking patient due to hypertension and diabetes, and just because this was a free clinic, 2 separate foreign body extractions, 1 involving splinters, from what the patient said was a yaoi paddle. Convention season was almost over anyway, so this is probably the last yaoi paddle incident that he'd have to deal with this year. Thank God. At least he didn't have any cat girls or fur balls this week. Damn. And the week following Otakon was this year that was awful for the clinic. Last year's New York Comic Con was second to those weeks in March around spring breaks for STDs and diagnoses. Ooh. Yes, he knew all too well the dark side of anime and or sci-fi conventions. Of course, there were worse things like furries. And their terrible get-togethers. Noon brought some relief from the tedium of the regular things he had to deal with, including those idiots who watched the doctors and bring in multiple stool samples. He took the elevator to his diagnostic medicine office. Most of the mail he got was the pharmaceutical companies wanting to push his products. Yeah, fat chance of that. Or the occasional plea or his team to look into their mysterious illness. He looked at today's mail, and Dr. House was intrigued by the envelope that appeared on his desk. The warning! Deja vu. Return address, completely in Japanese. The return address was some hospital in Nishimoya. No, is it Nishinomiya? Nishinomiya. Which he vaguely remembered as being a small city near Kobe. Or is it Kobe? I think it's Kobe. He would always associate Kobe with four things. Great beef, Grave of the Fireflies, which made even him tear up, the earthquake that was luckily he wasn't around for, and Kuro Suzuyama. He opened the elevator to look at his contents. There were certain legends in the medical community. House's ability to discover ailments when no one else could. Blackjack, the original rogue doctor who could produce good outcomes in patients that no one else could save. Royal Pains on USA, that was an homage ripoff of his concept, and yet a handful of conditions that would never be confirmed by the medical community as existing. Kiramana, the dehydrating, wasting disease that was only spoken of in a whisper, yet lest be struck down with it, was one of these. The letter inside the envelope was a request for him to come and help diagnose the first official case of Kimara that may have been found on a remote island that could be accessed by a very close to Nishimoya. If a week had gone by and the diagnosis turned out to be much more mundane, then the state would be comped by the hospital itself. The letter ended with your friend and admiring colleague, Kuro Suzuyama, endocrinology department head. Dr. House pondered what he may have read for a few minutes, and then decided whether or not he would encounter whatever he would encounter in Nishimoya had to be better than more gonorrhea exalts from 60-year-olds who you thought would know better by now. It turns out that she had heard of Dr. Suzuyama in a professional capacity, since they both shared the same field. House knew that in Dr. Cuddy, Dean in medicine, Lisa would be too busy to work with, and Rachel to chase myths and see old friends. He figured that Lisa as an endocrinologist would talk to a colleague of sorts and to learn from Japan's advanced healthcare system. He also wondered how much various lies and mistruths he had done over the last few months were putting a strain on his relationship with her, personally speaking, of course. This was something he'd have to deal with after he came back from Japan.